This is Still a Part of Us, a podcast where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter Red, and in this episode of Advice and Encouragement from a Lost Mom, I chat with Brooke, whose son, Tommy, was stillborn at 36 weeks. By the way, you can hear Brooke's and Ben's episodes about the birth of their child, Tommy, on episodes 25 and 27. Today we discuss with Brooke about how grief is very fluid for her and her family, and how she acknowledges her feelings of anger or sadness but doesn't stay in those feelings, and how she's felt that Tommy's found ways to take care of her along the way. As a word of caution to our listeners, this discussion contains emotional triggers of stillbirth and infant loss. Please keep yourself emotionally and mentally healthy and seek help if needed. Hope this helps someone out there. Brooke, thank you so much again for coming on and chatting with us today about your little Tommy. And we're grateful that we were able to listen to his birth story too. That was beautiful and
thank you.
Obviously heartbreaking, but thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you for letting us share him.
So just a bit of context for people. How long ago was Tommy born?
At time of recording, we are a week shy of his first birthday.
Yeah. And how has that looked for you? It's been about a year.
Yeah. I feel like it's a really fluid process. I feel like we have really good days and days that we don't get out of bed. I shouldn't say we. I don't get out of bed. So I would say grief is very fluid.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
So you are a stay-at-home mom, mm-hmm. and you have two little ones, mm-hmm. and they are active because they are 4 and 5?
3 and 5.
3 and 5.
Almost 4.
And so that...
Yes, very busy.
I was like, they're very busy. How does that look trying to grieve and mourn? Well, and maybe let's back up to what it was like the first few months after Tommy's death.
I feel like it's been the biggest silver lining through this whole process.
Really?
Yeah. The day we found out we lost Tommy, my husband said, we're going to be okay because of our kids. And I've found that to be so true.
Yeah.
They are just, I feel like we had to jump back into life because of them, and they deserved a mom and dad that are present. And so I feel like we tried really hard to not minimize or diminish what we've gone through, but to be fair to them too.
Yeah. You were there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been a process for them. Just the other morning, I woke up to the sound of Winnie crying and running into my room.
Oh.
And when she got to the door, she's like, Mom, I just miss Tommy so much. And it just caught me really off guard because she's 3. And I feel like so much of this process has been really over her head.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, that morning and a few times since, she said, I just wish Tommy would have been alive. And so it's been a process for them too.
Yeah. To realize that or kind of understand a little bit more and more every day.
Yeah. And I feel like initially it was really hard because I feel like they process their grief by like kind of regressing behaviorally or the way they were acting.
Yeah.
And that was really hard because I'm like, you're being crazy. But I know that like this is your way of processing what you've gone through, right. Which they need to too.
Yeah, they do. And they just don't know, they may not have the skills.
Yeah.
To do so.
And they're going through something a lot of adults haven't gone through.
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like that's something I've tried to be really patient with my kids, is being understanding of their process.
Yeah.
And I'm not like a weird hippie either that's like, feel what you need to feel. But I do feel like grief is such a process.
Yeah.
And it is for everyone.
And it's an individual process at that too.
Yes. Very individual.
So, and just meeting your kids today, I was like, yeah, Connor and Winnie are their own people. They're so different from each other, but
they are so strong. But I feel like they've been strong for us, which I'm so grateful for.
That's pretty great. Did Ben have to jump back into work pretty quickly after, or how did that look?
Thankfully, no. His work was really understanding and just said, like, you don't need to give us a date.
Oh.
Take whatever time you need. So Ben took off probably about 3 weeks.
Oh, good.
Which was really nice. It gave me some time to recover from my blood clot as well as delivery.
Yeah.
And I think by the time he went back, we were both kind of ready for some routine and normalcy.
Yeah.
It was really nice having him home, and I had a lot of anxiety when he went back. I was just worried about being alone with my thoughts all day without another adult. But I feel like in a lot of ways we were really ready for normalcy.
Right. Routine is super helpful, I think.
Especially for kids. Yeah. So I felt like we all needed it.
And so you mentioned, and if you haven't listened to Brooke's story, she did have a blood clot.
Yes.
And then she gave birth a week later.
Yes.
And this was a massive blood clot too. So how long did that end up taking to resolve?
6 months until I was like given the full clear. So I was on, I got to stop taking shots once I delivered. And I was just on an oral tablet for blood thinners for 6 months. And I went in every few weeks and they did an ultrasound to see the clot. Yeah. So yeah, it was 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah. Blood clots are no joke.
No joke, people.
I didn't know that, but they are life-changing.
And you're on, I'm assuming are you taking blood thinners now still?
Not currently. When we have another baby,
then will be.
Yeah, that'll be part of the process.
Yeah.
And if I ever have another one, I'll be on blood thinners the rest of my life.
Yeah. They'll you just know that now.
Yep. I have a very different medical future because of my clot.
Yeah. And how was recovery from the delivery? Because
I feel really lucky. I had a pretty good delivery.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
So I can't complain. Physically, I bounced back really quick from that. I would say the most painful part was my milk coming in and suppressing my supply. That was so painful. Yeah. And I feel like emotionally it was really hard too, because I was like, physically, I need my baby. Yeah. Like that, I physically need my baby and I don't have him.
Yeah. I think your milk coming in is like one of the injustices. It just is like,
oh, it's the meanest trick of them all.
Yeah. You're like, rude.
And there's no way around it.
Nope.
You just like 4 or 5 days of excruciating pain.
Yeah, it really is. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was awful. It was just awful. So you are busy and you guys got back into a routine of things. What do you do to mourn or to grieve? How does that look for you? What's helped you?
I feel like with our kids, we try to talk about Tommy a lot. And sometimes we bring him up and they bring him up all the time. We've kind of associated Blue with Tommy. Oh. Not kind of, we have. Yeah. And my kids are so good at finding Tommy and all the things we do. Like we had just taken our kids to Christmas in Color and they found Tommy trees and a Tommy tunnel and Tommy snowflakes. So I feel like my kids are really good at finding Tommy in the things we do. And I also feel like we've allowed ourselves to grieve. Like if there are days that it's just hard and we're sad, it's okay. And I let myself be sad and feel what I need to feel. I had a good friend who lost a daughter. And one of the pieces of advice she gave me, which I feel like I've lived by this last year, is let yourself feel whatever emotion you need to feel, but don't stay there. And so there have been times that I've been so angry. And I thought like, it's okay that I'm mad. I get to be mad. I just can't stay mad. Yeah. Or I'm so sad. I'm so depressed. And it's like, that's okay that I feel that way. I'm going to let myself feel it. And then I've got to get up tomorrow and I've got to it's got to be okay. Yeah. So I feel like that for me was like one of those like aha moments. Yeah. And I feel like it's really helped me with my grief. Yeah.
Now on the flip side of that, when you laughed for the first time or had fun or something, did you feel guilt when that happened?
Yeah. We lost Tommy at the beginning of January and my birthday is the day before Valentine's Day. And then we had Valentine's Day and they were a really great couple days. And I can remember by Valentine's night being like feeling guilty that I wasn't sad. Yeah. That I had like felt joy. But like, I know that's what Tommy would want. Like I've gone back to that so many times. Like Tommy doesn't want us to be sad for the rest of our lives. So I've really tried to remember that going forward and really trying to find ways to fill him in the joy that I feel, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And I was also going to say what your friend said of you could feel your emotions, but you just don't have to stay there. I mean, it kind of works with the, like, don't let that guilt linger either, right?
Totally. And it's interesting. The day we delivered Tommy, I said to Ben, like, I want to take the kids to Hawaii like when this is over, I want to take him to Hawaii. I want to go make happy memories with him.
Yeah.
And so we booked a trip the next week for March to take the kids to Hawaii.
Great.
And I can remember like booking the trip and being so excited. And then I got to my room and just sobbed. I mean, I was heartbroken because I was like, I'm going on this trip because we don't have Tommy. But the trip was magical and it was so healing for me in so many ways. And I just like, I felt Tommy so much in those like experiences and opportunities we've taken. And it was so good to go be with our kids and be in the warm sunshine. And I don't know, I just felt really healing to like do those happy things and then find ways to see and feel Tommy in those things.
That is beautiful the way you describe that. I think that's so cool.
Well, it's been a process.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Do you have any tokens or things that special objects that remind you of Tommy? I know that you mentioned the blue.
Yeah.
That's his color. And
I really love that. I still have a really hard time with the ambiguous things are great. Like the color blue or like the letter T, those ambiguous things I love.
Yeah.
I still have a really hard time holding his stuff. Like I have a little bag from the hospital and that we got back from the mortuary of his clothes, and like holding his clothes is still really, really hard for me.
Yeah.
But I love the way my kids find him, and that probably where I'm at in my grief, that probably brings me the most joy. The physical things are still really hard.
Yeah. It's still too, well, it really was a year ago.
Yeah. It's still so fresh.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I've held his clothes I dressed him in without crying.
Yeah.
It's still just,
which is totally fine.
yeah.
Totally
it's still
fine.
just hard.
Yeah. We were talking before we were recording, and I don't know, do you want to talk about your...
Oh, yeah, I'm totally good to talk about that. My husband and I both got tattoos about a month after Tommy died, and we both wanted him to be physically part of us. So I got a little blue heart on my chest where his head laid, where I held him against me. And I feel like for me, it's just been like a little Tommy reminder.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm like changing or swimming and even like my kids will talk about it, which I'm sure someday we'll have to address the whole tattoo thing down the
Yeah.
road. But it's just, I don't know. I feel like in all the ways I can integrate him into my life, it brings me a lot of joy.
Yeah.
Especially when I can find ways to do it without it being really sad.
Yes. Because, there's plenty of ways to where it can turn sad.
And I think something that's really unique about stillbirth loss, and this is something you'll never understand unless you go through it, is like all the memories you have associated with them are sad and painful. Like you don't get any of the happy ones.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you do being pregnant and feeling them move, whatever. And I'm not minimizing that, but it's really unique that like the only time you hold them, it's really sad.
Yes.
And the only time you ever see their face, like there's no life in it.
Yeah.
And it's something that you don't even understand unless you've experienced that specific kind of loss. And I feel like that's been something that's been really hard for me to work through. It's just that like finding happy ways to experience Tommy when all the experiences I had with him were really sad and traumatic.
Yeah. It is hard to disassociate that. I'm not sure if that's the correct word, but yeah, you've actually articulated something that I've not been able to articulate. 'Cause you're right. Like it's so true that all my interactions with my son have been, it's
really traumatic,
very traumatic.
Yes.
Very sad, very upsetting. And we try and I don't even know if the right word is make up memories or make up kind of scenarios that would be happier. And
right. And I think that's where you have to find the joy in them is like,
what?
But even that is like sad because you're like, on Christmas, I was like, oh, Tommy would be opening presents. And it's like, but he's not.
Yeah, he's not.
So it's hard. And I feel like with stillbirth loss, you almost feel like you have to quantify your loss. Like, I feel like people don't get stillbirth loss. They think, and I'm not minimizing miscarriages, but they essentially think it's a miscarriage.
Yeah.
And it's like, I birthed my baby. I buried his body. I dressed his body. Like, I did all the things you did.
Yeah.
And I didn't get my baby at the end.
Yep.
And so I have gone, I did some grief counseling this summer, and I feel like one of my aha moments through this was I feel very protective over my grief because I feel like I've had to explain it to people.
They don't quite understand
yes.
everything that you're going through.
Yes. And I feel like when someone loses a child after birth, it's very easy to relate to that and think like, oh, that would be so sad. And I think with stillbirths, you think like, oh, that's really sad, but you don't realize what that loss feels like. Yeah. I don't know if any of that makes sense.
It does to me because I've been through it, because it feels like, so this is what it feels like to me. It just is like all of my hopes and dreams for this child and the way our family is going to look in the future were gone.
Yeah.
In an instant.
And you're so close to it.
Yeah. Oh, so close. Like we were, you were 36 weeks right on, which if you had given birth to him even the week before, like we had talked about,
he would have been a healthy, viable.
Yep. He would have maybe spent a little bit of time in the NICU to get his lungs going and everything, but he probably would have been fine coming home and same thing. But then all of a sudden in an instant,
it's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
You're not bringing him home. You're not able to make those memories.
You go through all of it.
Yeah.
Like it's not like you lose a baby and then you get to skip labor and delivery and recovery and your milk coming in and like
paying the medical bills.
Right.
I mean, like all of these things.
4 months to the mark, hair, like clumps of hair.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't get to skip any of this process, but I did it all with empty arms.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of the meanest trick
it is
of them all.
It really is. It feels so unfair.
Yeah. And so through grief counseling this summer, I've just realized how protective I feel over my grief because I feel like not everyone understands it. And I don't want to have to justify the sadness I feel to anyone else.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's good. Though. Yeah. You shouldn't. Like you have every right to feel sad.
Yeah.
And all of that. So you have gone to counseling.
Yeah. I did some grief counseling this summer.
And by yourself, or did Benco, or you?
I just did it myself. Mm-hmm. I would say it was good. I wouldn't say it like changed my life by any means, but I do feel like internally I had some like realizations of why I do things a certain way or how I feel. So overall, I'd probably say it was a good thing.
Okay. That's good. You mentioned share parents in your birth episode. Have you gone to any of those grief support groups or interacted with them?
Okay. I haven't. That process for me, the night we had Tommy, I so appreciate what they did and like having his molds, but overall that experience wasn't something that like really spoke to me.
It didn't resonate with you.
Yeah. And everyone's different through grief. And I'm learning that more and more, like what's useful for some isn't for others. And so I haven't pursued it too much just because it hasn't felt like something that would be super useful for me.
Right.
But we did, earlier this year, we sold Team Tommy shirts.
Oh,
yeah. And
tell me about that.
We did the Running with Angels 5K. Have you ever done that at Thanksgiving Point?
We haven't, but I mean, like,
it's fun. It's a really beautiful, it's all through the Thanksgiving Point Gardens.
Now, is it like a remembrance kind of run for those you've lost?
For infant loss, and all the money raised goes up to primaries.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And it's so pretty through the gardens. So we did that with our families and we made Team Tommy shirts.
Oh, that's so cute.
And after we made them, so many people around us were like, we want one. And so we sold them, and the money we raised, we donated back to Share so they could do the molds for other families.
Is cool.
Yeah. It felt really therapeutic to do it.
That is great. Team Tommy. That's so cute.
My kids will always say that. They'll be like, there's a Team Tommy shirt or there's a Team Tommy tree. And our neighbors were so nice. So many people bought them, and it's been fun to see people around just wearing them in their Team Tommy shirts.
Ah, that's so great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another reminder, like a visual reminder.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Kind of just talking about so just a little bit of background. So Brooke and I met at this dinner.
Yeah.
That people randomly came together, and it was all lost moms.
And I don't think any of us had ever met anybody in the flesh. We'd all met through social media.
Exactly. And so I was invited because of my cousin, Bree. She was, we interviewed her on this podcast already, and she's like, can I bring Winter? And I was like, yes, I would love to come. And so we had not met.
Nope.
And then we discovered all of our sad commonalities of losing babies. And I feel like that dinner was super, super therapeutic.
Absolutely. I think of like all the things I've done post Tommy. that has been, I think it's just so refreshing to talk to people who like genuinely, truly understand what you're going through.
And how terrible it is.
Yeah. Because all loss is sad, but I do think stillbirth loss is a really unique kind of loss.
Yeah.
And to be around other moms who like get it, it feels so good.
It felt so great. So one of my favorite times while we were there sitting at that dinner was when everybody started to kind of complain about
talk about all the helpful and air quotation comments.
Yes, exactly. The comments that people say to you and are so well intentioned, but maybe not the best thing to do. So is there anything that you want to share that you would say, maybe don't say that to somebody?
That's hard because what I don't like, somebody else could find a lot of solace in.
Right.
But for me and I won't speak for Ben, but for me, one of the things that I haven't found super helpful is like when people kind of minimize the loss by speaking. So as I mentioned, we're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Yeah. And I feel as though a lot of people will say like, oh, but they're with Jesus, and like kind of minimize, like, it's okay. You don't like,
he's good.
Yeah, he's okay. And it's like, I believe that. And that's like what gets me through. But like, we're still super sad about it. And we wish more than anything he were here. And so like, I know those comments are so well intended.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not like necessarily, they don't like hurt my feelings. It's just like, it's not super helpful.
It doesn't bring him back.
One of the things I really appreciated was right after we lost Tommy, our bishop, who's the leader of our congregation, came and just wanted to see Ben and I. And he's like, I know you guys have testimonies. I know you believe the church is true. Like there's a lot of faith and like hope in that. He's like, but what you're feeling right now is the sting of death and nothing can take that away. And I just really appreciated him validating,
acknowledging,
yes, what we were feeling.
Yeah.
And that like, it does. It just sucks.
Yeah.
And I think too, and this is kind of one of your questions, Winter, is like, what is helpful? And I have found people that have genuinely experienced grief, they don't try to fix it. Nope. They just say, I'm so sorry. Mm-hmm. And even they don't compare grief. And I've noticed even other lost moms, they don't say like, oh, I know exactly what you're going through. It's like, I've been there and I have my own story and it's hard. Yeah. And I've really appreciated that. And I can always tell almost immediately someone who has genuinely felt loss versus someone who hasn't, because the people who have are just apologetic and they don't try to fix it. Yeah. And I feel like when you're experiencing loss, that's really helpful because it validates what you're feeling inside.
Yeah. Because it really is, you want to feel all the feels.
Right.
You have to, as part of the grief process.
Absolutely.
I think it's more to process the grief. You need to be able to feel all the feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was super helpful. Like just talking about what has helped and what has not helped.
But it's interesting. Like before I lost Tommy, I'm sure I said so many of those things. And now I like kind of cringed, like looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I was so ignorant.
Yeah. And I think you want, and that's what we always give people the benefit of the doubt.
Absolutely.
Because they just want to help.
And you don't want anyone to have a familiarity with loss.
No, you don't want anybody to join this club.
Right. And I always tell my husband, like, I feel like we joined the worst club in the world, but it's genuinely a club filled with the kindest, most empathetic people.
Yeah.
Like I've met some of the most remarkable people through losing Tommy.
Yeah. Me too.
And I feel like that's kind of one of his gifts to me. And like his way of taking care of me is by putting really great people in my path.
Ah, that's so great.
Well, I have felt like Tommy has found ways to take care of me and reassure me that he's okay.
That's so beautiful.
Well, I'm really grateful for it as his mom.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sure that is so nice to feel his presence. In kind of indirect ways or direct ways.
Well, yeah. And I feel like I've had times where like I can hear him say like, I'm okay, Mom. And I just love when I have those moments like, okay, then I am too. Like we can do this.
We can do this together.
Yep.
How has Ben been through all of this?
Oh my gosh. I could do a whole nother podcast on Ben. Honestly, I don't know how I would have done this without him. He like through my blood clot, through losing Tommy, to like the times when I'm sad for no particular reason, like he's never made me feel bad about it or made me feel like I shouldn't feel those ways. And like just so many times through this process, like my hands just found his and it was like, okay, like we're going to be okay. And one of the pieces of advice we got right after Tommy died was a lot of people who experience loss get divorced. And Ben and I made like a verbal promise to each other that day, like we're not going to let this ruin us. Like we are going to use this and become better people because of it. And that hasn't always been easy, but I honestly feel like the luckiest person in the world that, and it sounds so cliche, but I honestly feel like the luckiest person in the world that like I've had Ben by my side through this. And I think like when you're dating and falling in love, it's all fun, but until you go through something like this, I don't think you realize how deeply you can love and connect to a person.
Yeah. It can be a really defining moment. And that's really cool that you actually talked about it. Like,
I think, I mean, if anyone listening is going through grief, I think that's like one of the most imperative things you can do with your spouse is talk about it openly.
Yeah.
Because statistically, it happens a lot.
It really does. It's
and I
really
understand
sad.
why it does.
Mm-hmm.
I think even Ben and I's process through this has been so different. And being patient with the other person, because sometimes things make him sad that don't really strike me as sad. And a lot of the times that things that are hard for me, he's okay with.
Yeah.
But like, even with the loss, we had really different experiences. Like I had Tommy for 9 months
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like even that loss feels different.
Yeah. So it sounds like is you're not comparing.
Right.
It's not a comparison game. It's just different.
And patience, lots of patience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it really does take a lot of patience. How are you going to be celebrating his birthday?
I honestly don't know. We've talked about a lot of different things. I think ultimately we are so grateful for all the goodness and kindness we've received this last year. And we have honestly received so much kindness from so many people. And I think ultimately we want to find ways to pay it back on his birthday. Even if it's paying for someone's lunch at a drive-thru or their drink at Maverick.
Yeah.
Just finding ways to pay back all the goodness we received. And I think what we went through is like this, I hope the saddest thing I ever experienced. But it really is so humbling. People's desire to take care of us. It's really been touching how good people are. And I think that's probably the best thing I've learned through this is like people are inherently good. There's a lot of bad in the world, but the good outweighs the bad.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
It's so hopeful, isn't it?
Yeah. In like the most unhopeful of circumstances.
Yeah.
It's really bizarre.
Yeah.
I can remember like the day after we lost Tommy, Ben was just crying and he's like, I don't understand how I can feel so grateful when I'm so sad. And I think that's just how we've felt over and over again this last year.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. Like one of the things that we felt such gratitude because we were surrounded.
And people are good.
People are so kind.
Yeah.
So kind.
They really are.
I think it's kind of just lastly, is there any advice that you would give to anybody that's listening that might be going through this or have a family member going through this?
That there's life after it. I think when you experience that kind of loss, you can't imagine how the sun will ever come out again or how you'll ever smile again. And the truth is it's hard. And some days it's a conscious effort to fill any level of happiness, but it will come, and it doesn't come all at once, but it comes bit by bit. And I think it's really important to be patient with yourself while you find the sunshine again. And that's okay. Some days we have weeks of sunshine and other days it's minutes of sunshine.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Yeah, it's a process and a fluid process at that. And so just be patient with yourself. But I know we still have a long way to go with our process. But a year later, like, I have faith that we're going to be okay. It'll look different than I thought it would.
Totally.
But it's okay. And Tommy wants it to be okay.
Which is so great. Brooke, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
This was great.
Well, I feel like as his mom, the greatest gift for me is being able to tell his story. So Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. This is what we're doing for. That's why we're here. So
thank you.
Thank you. So many thanks to Brooke for such a wonderful conversation, a candid conversation about what it's been like ever since Tommy was born and how it's looked for her and her family. And I'm grateful for the insight that she has shared with us today. This has really, really helped me, and it was delightful to talk to her today. Head over to our website, stillapartofus.com, where you can find the show notes, including a full transcript of this interview and any resources that were mentioned, where you can sign up for our short and helpful email newsletter, where you can learn how you can become a patron and support the work it takes to produce the show for just a few dollars a month, and lastly, where you can find out how to get in touch with us if you want to share your child's story on the show. The show is produced and edited by Winter and Lee Red. Thanks to Josh Woodward for letting us use his song, Vanishing Note. You can find him at joshwoodward.com. Lastly, subscribe to this podcast and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us.
Shortcuts make long delays. J.R.R. Tolkien.